Welcome to the Highlights from Ukraine podcast, your daily audio summary of the latest news reported in the Ukrainian media. There is an easy way to support us. You can rate us in the apps where you are listening to this podcast, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and leave a glowing review. This way more people would learn about the podcast and truth about the Russia's invasion of Ukraine. My name is Artem, and here is the news. 344 days left the Russian invasion of Ukraine. 15 European commissioners arrived in Kyiv, led by President of the European Commission Ursula von der Leyen, reports Interfax Ukraine. They took part in a joint meeting with the Ukrainian government. At the meeting, the President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky said that 2023 should be a time when there will be no barriers for negotiations on Ukraine's full membership in the European Union. He expressed hope that this spring the European Commission will provide an assessment of Ukraine's implementation of the 7 EU recommendations that were submitted when obtaining the EU candidate status. According to Zelensky, Ukraine and the European Union are no longer separate subjects of European life. Our values are common, our destiny is common, our enemy is common, said the president. He informed that the European Commission prepared a report that contains a deep analysis of the state of regulatory convergence between Ukraine and the EU. The president said that Ukraine's priorities are further integration of the economy of Ukraine and the EU, Ukraine's accession to the EU roaming zone, further transport and trade liberalization. Volodymyr Zelensky pointed out that Russia is increasing the pace of adaptation to European sanctions, and this needs to be corrected. According to him, while the EU slowed down the pace of adapting new sanctions, Russia has more time to adapt to them. The president stressed that it is important to reduce the ability of the Kremlin to circumvent already implemented sanctions. President of the European Commission Ursula von der Leyen responded that the EU will approve the 10th package of sanctions against Russia before February 24th, the anniversary of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. According to the President of the European Commission, a new price cap for Russian oil is being prepared together with G7 partners. Russia will have to give its assets for the restoration of Ukraine, von der Leyen said, adding that the EU is deciding how this would be implemented. Earlier, Ukraine insisted on introducing restrictions on the Russian industry for the production of missiles and drones, the banking system and the nuclear industry, in particular against the Rosatom Corporation. President of the European Commission Ursula von der Leyen said that the visit of the board of the European Commission to Kyiv is a sign of Ukraine's tremendous progress and a message for investors that Ukraine will move forward on its European path. According to her, the EU wants to help Ukraine mobilize its full economic potential in the fight against Russian aggression and after for reconstruction. Von der Leyen assured that Europe is with Ukraine for as long as it takes. She announced plans to open in The Hague an international investigation center for the crimes committed by Russia in Ukraine. The center will coordinate the collection of evidence and it will be integrated into the joint investigation team supported by Eurojust. The European Commission will also propose to the EU member states to extend for a year a suspension of all customs duties and trade protection measures for imports from Ukraine. Ukraine and the EU signed an agreement on Ukraine's participation in the EU program Single Market, reports European Pravda. According to Prime Minister of Ukraine Denis Shmyhal, the budget of the program is 4.2 billion euros and one of its main components is the development of business competitiveness. Ukraine and the EU also concluded a memorandum on strategic partnership in the field of renewable gases, hydrogen and other synthetic gases. The Single Market Program is designed to simplify access to the markets of EU countries, promote business and its development, competitiveness and stability of companies and entire sectors of the economy. High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy Josep Borrell, arriving in Kyiv on Thursday, announced the training of another 15,000 Ukrainian military as part of the already functioning European Union Military Assistance Mission, reports Radio Liberty. The overall number of trained personnel will be 30,000 people. Earlier, the EU Council announced the approval of the 7th package of military assistance to Ukraine in the amount of 500 million euros and the allocation of 45 million euros for the training of Ukrainian personnel. The head of European diplomacy also told the Prime Minister that the EU will provide 25 million euros to support demining efforts in endangered areas of Ukraine. Prime Minister of Ukraine Denis Shmyhal said during a meeting with Executive Vice President of the European Commission Valdis Dombrovskis that Ukraine needs funding for restoration work on its territory in the amount of $17 billion in 2023, reports Forbes Ukraine. Shmyhal stressed that one of the key sources of funding is Russian assets and a real mechanism should be created using them to compensate for the damage caused by the war. The Prime Minister also called on the EU to join the rapid restoration of Ukraine. In his evening video address, President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky said that the enemy is at a specific stage when Russia's strategic defeat is already clear, but tactically they still have the resources to attempt offensive actions. They are looking for options to try to change the course of the war and are trying to put the potential of all the territories they still control in the service of aggression. The president stressed that Ukraine needs to continue strengthening its resilience and speak with one voice to the world on defense supplies. He also believes that it is crucial to tangibly increase global pressure on Russia every month. The New York Times informs that during the 11 months of full-scale war, Russia lost about 200,000 servicemen in Ukraine killed and wounded, reports Ukrainska Pravda. According to American and other Western officials, the Russian army suffered particularly heavy losses in the battles for Bakhmut and Soledar. The losses in just 11 months are 8 times higher than the American losses in 2 decades of the war in Afghanistan, the article says. At the same time, experts don't believe that human casualties are likely to become a deterrent for Putin's military goals. Putin is ready for hundreds of thousands of casualties in Ukraine, although a larger number of casualties could undermine his political support. If you like what we do and would like to tip us, you can now do so directly to our PayPal. Check out the link in the description to this episode for more details. And as usual, you can subscribe to our Patreon. In gratitude for your help, we will give you access to a series of exclusive episodes on wartime life in Ukraine. We call on you to demand from governments of your countries to impose the toughest sanctions possible on Russia and its citizens to stop their invasion of Ukraine.